So let me just throw out some of the ideas that have been talked about. I think a couple things, is to have this be a focused, maybe even a local geography type idea. One potential thing that kids could do is generate their own data. They could do a survey 1, 2, 3 and go out and get responses to whatever it is that they're trying to survey. They could go out in the field and actually collect data and put it on a map. So that's one potential way to look at this. And we could take maybe an overall broad topic challenge like improving water or sustainability or some other topic like that. Kelly, you kind of talked about maybe focusing in on a particular AP topic.
Well, I would just recommend something along the lines of, one of those cross unit themes in AP, something sustainability. What does
Okay.
sustainability mean? It's general enough yet, where a student still has some creativity, yet still specific enough where it can focus them in. Something like gender, something globalization and me, something that ties in, that could tie into their local community, that they could use it on a variety of different scales there as well. Because I still think I don't want to limit a student with their ideas when they come to me, simply
Right.
because of the topic. So I want it broad enough where it encompasses this broad range of ideas, yet specific enough to kind of narrow it into a geographic focus.
Well, if you do what you say and take an AP topic that they've already learned about,
Right.
and now we're going to do a real world, take a look at that through that particular lens and try and find out something.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's just something with globalization. It ties in with so much uh, into the AP course, and as well as what students I think are doing. Again, with sustainability and what it looks like in their neighborhood versus Minneapolis versus Singapore. Again, the variety of scales that could be used, um, are just numerous. But again, I think that's the type of topic I think you need, that I think History Day does a good job with too, that is broad enough, um, yet specific at the same time, if that makes sense.
well, no, you could take a globalization idea and end up having part of it be how is that affecting us right here where we live,
Right. And
you
I think
know?
it still affects Duluth. I think it still affects, obviously, East Grand Forks. It affects all the way down to Worthington. Globalization, is just this huge topic that, you could easily tie in the processing plants down in Worthington. You could tie in the shipping industry in Duluth. All of those different topics would fit into that heading there of something like that.
Mhm. So, like with a topic like that, like globalization, and I know the only 1 year now I've done the Minnesota on the Map competition. The focus of the map really needed to be on Minnesota, and maybe if we're really focusing on like a local issue, are we envisioning that their map has like that their map just has like a single kind of like a single focus, or could their map look like, okay, here's their local map, and then let's jump over, let's look at a different scale of the same, I guess I don't know what the question is I'm asking. The question is do we need to have it confined to a particular area, or could they jump scale throughout the story map, or is that?
No, I think you're touching on, I mean, when you deal with GIS, you can go from your backyard to the entire world and you can collect data and you can basically map that data, or you can go out and find data that actually already exists. I'm working with a student right now up in Cloquet who's trying to explain why wild turkeys are now being found in the Cloquet area, which they are. She found a layer online that goes back to 1980 something that has wild turkey sightings. And if you map it over time, you can see the area where people are seeing wild turkeys move north. And she's trying to make the hypothesis that climate change is causing the habitat to change to make it adaptable for wild turkeys to be living in those areas. So there you've got, that's a Minnesota focused one, but she actually, the key is finding some kind of data and looking for a pattern.
Yeah.
Or looking, that's kind of what you're trying to establish, whether it's at a broad scale or a local scale.
I still like to focus on Minnesota, but there are a variety of topics that could tie in with Minnesota.
Well, yeah, if you have a broad topic, then they can, if they decide they want to do a Minnesota-based look at it, fine. If they decide they want to do a broad scale international look at it,
yeah.
The key is finding data that you can, that's already established, that you can put on a map, or creating your own data and putting it on a map and trying to prove a point of some kind.
Yep.
The other question to consider is, do we want this to, so other than just having a theme that's related to AP Human Geography, which really most of these general themes could relate to lots of disciplines, do we want this to be a very distinct project, or do we want it in some ways to resemble the Minnesota on the Map project? Or do we want to have like specific, like, how do we differentiate this between this project and the Minnesota on the Map project? Or do we really want to? The advantage of not differentiating it too much would be that some of these students who we have great projects from could submit their maps the following year as sophomores, which might generate some really great projects for Minnesota. But then again, it's not like any,
Well, I think that's where the role of having a theme, because somebody, one of your students, you say, is going to take her project from last year and then use it for the map competition this year, only improve upon it. And that's been done up in Cloquet. There's a teacher up there, then she's had 3 different students basically using the same data on wolf movement. And they got from the DNR actual GIS movement of wolves. So they know where the dens are and where the wolves go and how far they roam, and they've got all. So I mean, it like I said, but what theme would that fit? So if it fits one of the themes, I think and Dave chime in on this. I mean, what would be the least challenging theme, since this is the first year you're going to do it? In other words, the one that most students would say, okay, I'm kind of actually excited about this, whether it's.
Well, I'm trying to think of what you're talking about here. If you've got the contest going and you have this other project going with AP courses, the intersection would only be if the AP courses had students working on Minnesota.
Well, the whole.
You want to divide this into 2, split your limited number of high schools doing this too much. But I like Mollie's idea of having somebody do something at the end of the school year after the contest ends, and then entering it their own project, not a variation of, like you were describing different students' projects, but the same. But Mollie was talking about one student coming back the next year with kind of the same project. I think that's really a strong idea.
Yeah. So the purpose of the AP project is, we as AP teachers are finding it hard to be able to submit Minnesota on the Map projects because of the AP exam.
Right.
So it's going to be a post-exam, because the AP exam is May 4th, and the project, I think, Jim, is due on May 9th or something this year.
Yeah.
There's just too much going on in AP Human Geography to be able to really dedicate time to work on a good Minnesota on the Map project. So then they're going to work on it. They would miss the deadline for the current year's Minnesota map. We create an AP focused project, but yeah, I like the idea of like, hey, like here's 5 students that did great, and if they're willing to, it would be totally volunteer. They would want to. They'd have to want to work on it the next year. But yeah.
You could also tie that with the Scholars of Distinction, which is supposed to be independent work. So if they go through the AP course, take that last month, do something, whatever, and then the next year as an independent project, enter it in Scholars of Distinction. I think that would be a nice way to stitch together some things that are now quite disconnected.
Well, here's something to think about. The teachers in Sauk Rapids had 250 competition entries at the level in Sauk Rapids. How did they do that? They had one requirement. Every student was going to make a map of some kind based on something in Minnesota. So that was the simple project. Okay, everybody makes a map. When the kids got done making the maps, the teachers said, well, you 10 or 15 or 20 kids here have a really great idea for a map. Let's turn it into a presentation by turning it into a story map and tell the story of what you mapped. So, I mean, one way to approach this would be to say to every single AP kid, the last thing you're going to do for the year is you're going to make a map, a GIS-based map on a topic related to whatever AP theme that you want to pick. And then the teachers can handpick the ones that they think are the best maps to submit into the competition. But every kid would at least make a map, if nothing else. And then the ones that really get into it, you could have them take that map and then tell the story of what they're trying to get at by making that map. Does that make sense at all?
Well, you were talking about the next year.
Yeah, I'm talking about the AP challenge.
No. The AP challenge are you imagining that to be an event that ends in June and some AP maps are picked as winners?
Yes. Yeah. So in other words, the idea came about as Mollie was describing. You've got these AP kids.
Yeah. I just didn't know that you were actually going to have winners here. I didn't think it was going to be a contest. Yeah, no, we're going to, in fact, I've got money in Amazon gift cards that students who won prizes never claimed them. I think I've got like $600 in Amazon gift cards that could be used for an award this time around. We might be able to talk Charlie into seeing if Esri is willing to, because this could become another national opportunity for kids. I don't know that you could run a national competition, but you could definitely have states at least have their own competitions at the end of the year.
There was some talk about even adding a GIS course for AP.
Yeah.
I think that's been a little bit put on the back burner now, especially with COVID, but that would be a natural connection there too.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm kind of, from like some of the things we've talked about up to this point, I like the idea of globalization. I think that would be a very easy theme to start out with. I guess it's obviously super broad and covers every single AP unit. I also like the idea of them doing so focusing at a local topic. And so it's like globalization within their community. And then maybe also, and I don't know what you guys think about this, requiring like an aspect of it, so there to be some field work or some collection of data on their own.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know what our world will look like in May, but hopefully it'll just be warmer outside.
I just don't think we're going to get a lot of buyback from students entering both competitions. Once they're done with us, they're done. And then they move on to AP US history or whatever.
Right.
Mhm.
Asking them to focus again on the Minnesota map competition the next year with their same project. I don't think there's going to be much of a connection.
No,
there.
I don't need, I think this is a standalone end of the year. Those teachers that want to participate and have their students participate, have the students create their projects. They have basically about 3, maybe 4 weeks, which since you're done with the test, you don't have anything new that you're introducing. I don't know what you typically do with this time anyway, but to me, this would be a logical time to do a project like this that pulls together. So I'm here sitting, okay, so National History Day would say, okay, globalization, what they would do is they have a phrase or something that kind of confines what you're talking about. So the old, think globally, act locally. I mean, you could take a little saying like that for globalization. And so you're trying to tie together, here's a global issue. What are we doing on the local level to address that global issue kind of approach? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well, isn't there a term in the AP lexicon called glocalism?
There is.
And that means what?
A combination of global and local.
Local.
So the ethnic stores on Lake Street are examples of glocalism.
Localization.
Well, all you have to do, Jim, is figure out some criteria to make to use to judge the program.
Well, to me, that's the first time around is always an interesting time because you figure out 2 things, what works and what doesn't. So, I mean,
Yep.
if the
Sorry to
people that are,
interrupt.
go
Are you
ahead.
looking for a map or are you looking for a story map?
Well, for final project, we're looking for a story map, I think. It might not be the only option because if you've ever seen the Johns Hopkins COVID-19 dashboard that's got a pile of data in it, but there's no way that kids in 3 weeks are going to be able to put something like that together. They could do a survey 1, 2, 3. They could collect their data. Focused
Wasn't
on
it a high school kid who came up with that?
the Johns Hopkins one.
Yeah. I thought it was like a high school kid who used that data and connected the two. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know the story behind it, but I mean, it's maybe the most famous
Right.
dashboard. So there's dashboards, there are web apps that just attempt to create a map that can be manipulated. I think for AP geography, a story map to me makes more sense because it's kind of like I've got a hypothesis. This is what I think related to this topic. I'm going to go find some data. I'm going to put that data on a map, and then I'm going to find out if my patterns or relationships that I've been able to map demonstrate my hypothesis or not. So it's whether it does or doesn't isn't the point. The point is the kid did a research project based on a hypothesis that's related to a topic and either confirmed what they thought or found out what I thought really wasn't what it was. There's something else going on here. So it's basically just a mini research project.
I think you have to be careful so it just doesn't turn into another research project.
Right.
So it doesn't turn into separatism in Bosnia, which you're not going to make any original maps or anything like that. It's going to be a classic kind of, I'm going to read some books, I'm going to extract some information, I'm going to present it in either a slideshow or a story map, and it's just a presentation software.
Well, that's why I said you need to have a map. And on that map needs to be data, some of which can be just literally found someplace on the internet and manipulated. Or, there's tons and tons of data that is available, and some of it could be student created data.
And there needs to be And I think, Dave, what you're getting at is there needs to be a spatial analysis piece to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
there needs
no.
to, which is part of the Minnesota map rubric, which oftentimes students miss, right?
Right.
So really, I mean, that needs to be the key part. So I am doing a session at GeoFest on this project. I don't know how many people are going to attend. It might not be very many, as you kind of pointed out, Jim. We don't necessarily always get tons of people at the Minnesota map session, but for that, it would be. So I want to obviously have a very clear, like, what is the, you know, how are we presenting this project, as well as like on my own, I can do, you know, I want to be able to say like, hey, like if you come to this session, you can have like you can kind of, you can have some things kind of ready to go for that last month of school. Here's a project you can do with your kids last month of school. You obviously will have to do a lot of your own planning, but here's some like, here's even like a lesson, a quick lesson you could do on map making. Here's a lesson you could do on how to make a story map. Like here's a lesson, maybe not, I'm probably not gonna do all of this before GeoFest, but even just like, here's a way to get your kids to think about the theme, would be part of that session. So feeling like we can present this as, we have this kind of packaged thing, you can take it, you can do whatever you want with it within your own classroom, but the reason I want you to come, you know, the advantage of you coming to this session is that you can kind of be good to go post May 4th. And, you know, you can work collaboratively with other people in the state, or just.
Well, if you can give me enough direction, I have the time to work on the nitty-gritty part of this. I was thinking I could create a hub like I did for the Minnesota on the Map competition, which would be for the AP challenge, which would basically have everything on it, the theme, you know, what's expected, you know, and if we can have prizes, you know, for entries turned in from schools, and maybe only have the best project turned in from each high school or from each teacher. If there's 2 AP teachers, then there could be 2 projects submitted. But those kind of details. And I think, and I agree with Molly, there's 2 factors here. And I've thought a lot about this, and it really boils down to, in my opinion, why would I use GIS to teach anything? And I keep thinking about the use of technology in education and how it's changed over time. So when I started teaching, the big, huge piece of technology was the overhead projector. And people were creating transparencies. There were businesses. There was the 16mm projector, and companies around the world were creating educational films that you could bring into the classroom, you know. And now you guys have lived through the internet, the ability to use the internet, the digital projector, PowerPoint present. I mean, you think of all the different little pieces of technology that have had a major impact on education. And what I love about this particular tool, it's completely a real world tool. It's used by professional people. It wasn't designed to be an educational tool, but it can be. And it provides the ability for students to do original research, create maps, and present what they find through a story map presentation, which is one of the ways you can do it. So there is that little layer of technical stuff that kids have to know how to do. I think Molly said you've actually used those map lessons that I posted on the when I did them, I thought if a student would do all three of those, they'd pretty much be able to make a competition entry. They'd know enough about maps and layers and that kind of stuff. So there's that technology layer that you just can't totally avoid, but you don't want that to be the only thing that kids are focusing on. You still want them to focus on the theme, the topic, and what it is they're trying to present.
Well, it sounds like Mollie's got the right idea to come up with, as Jerry Pitzel used to say, the can of corn, where you hand somebody something that they can make, they can
Right.
use away. And then you guys have to figure out how you're going to judge the contest, the entries, I should say.
Right. Well, I think a lot, I mean, my thought is the judging this and the judging the Minnesota on the map competition would be pretty similar. You're kind of looking for the same things. But I would expect the AP geography kids to be functioning at a little bit higher level geographically in terms of their spatial analysis and what, you know, that's going to be done at a higher level. Or am I mistaken on that?
Yeah, you would hope. But
I mean,
I
you
also
would
know that a
hope
lot
so.
of the Minnesota on the map projects that you already get, like for example, Lori Bond's class is a bunch of gifted 8th graders. So they're also functioning at very high levels.
Right.
I would agree. Ideally, that's the case. It's not always in reality though, but
Yeah, because a lot of those kids that are doing the high school projects right now are doing very, very high quality work.
yeah.
And I don't know that you can see much difference between them and an AP. The only difference would be the theme.
Right. So what I'd like, if you guys could agree upon the basic theme, if it's globalization is the one you want to tackle it, but then at least pose a geographic question related to the theme. So
Okay.
the kids not only have the theme, it's kind of like, okay, can you prove something?
Yeah. I kind of, and I guess sometimes I need to take a second and I'll send you some ideas, maybe more
Yeah, no,
succinct later, but maybe the idea of, you know, how is what's happening at a local level affecting things on other scales? You know, like how is what's happening in your local environment influencing processes that are happening on multiple scales?
or the other way around.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, to me, that's a great, because you could link it locally. I mean, I'm assuming you would want to find a local connection to a global issue of some kind. Is that correct or not?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Dave, does that sound right?
Every issue is local.
Well, every
Yeah.
issue is local, but is it also global?
I mean, what's not always local is some of these cultural things that are in AP, like language differences and so on. But even there, you do see some difference in languages with the immigrant populations, but it's not like Belgium, for example.
I just
Yeah,
got
if you took something like maybe some combination of globalism and sustainability, or something that's got a little punch.
Or one even more open-ended idea would be to tell the kids, you pick the theme you want to, if it's urbanization, take urbanization. If it's language, what are the major themes? But the key thing would be they have to pick. The only thing of an advantage there is you would hope you'd hit a kid's hot button. Because I mean, the diffusion one with popular culture, some kids might think that's kind of a fun issue to tackle versus some economic issue.
So you're saying like take the theme of globalization or sustainability or whatever the broad theme is, and then
build your project around that theme.
they kind of choose like almost like the unit or the topic that the vein they want to go down.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you would say, okay, you've picked the theme, you've picked I would say, so here are the requirements. You have to have a map. If you can't have a project without a map. You can build a story map without a map, but you can't have this project without a map. The map has to have verifiable data, either that you collected or that you found from a reliable source. And your project has to somehow or another address spatial analysis. In other words, what conclusion can you draw from this? Does that, am I off base there, or does that sound like that's?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's either have everybody do the same theme. That's one way to approach. Another one would be, we've got 1 month here. I want you to pick whatever topic that we studied this year that you thought was really more interesting to you, and then create a project that has these factors. You got a map, you've got data, you've got a hypothesis of some kind that you're trying to prove. And when you get all done, you're going to put it all together in a story map
Mm-hmm.
that I could give to anybody.
Right. So
I could go to Joe Blow on the street and give him your story map, and without any background knowledge of what your topic was about, they could open it up, go through it and say, oh, I get it. That makes sense to me.
Mhm.
So it can't be
So-
something that so esoteric that nobody else would understand it. It's got to be.
Well, that's not going to be in AP human geography. It's all very practical.
Yep.
I kind of like Mollie's idea of letting people have freedom, and then maybe if they can't come up with an idea, the teacher says, well, study urbanization or study diffusion or something.
and I think the way I would present it, is like having that open-ended theme, right? Globalization, let's say, is our theme. And then like when they're generating topics, say like, well, what was your favorite unit in human geography? You know, did you like the political unit? Did you like the agriculture unit? Like, then go with something in that vein. You can apply this theme to any of these topics.
So, okay, no, I mean, of course, I'm kind of a pop culture guy. I mean, when I was doing my research for Dave's class on diffusion, I was kind of blown away when I started discovering there were people doing hip hop in Egypt and places that I never would have anticipated finding people dressed and using the same exact urban music that came out of the Bronx in New York back in the 1970s and early 80s.
And that's globalization, right? So
that's totally globalization.
Yeah. So whatever sparks your interest, they'll be able to apply pretty much anything that sparks their interest in the course to this theme. And that's kind of like the History Day thing too, is like the themes can really be applied to.
Oh yeah, no. What I learned from History Day, doing it for the 3 or 4 or 5 years that I worked with kids on it, it doesn't matter what the theme is. If a kid wants to do the shirtwaist factory fire, he'll make it fit, or she'll make it fit the theme somehow. So some kids just basically say, this is what I want to do this thing. Here's the theme. Okay, I'll make it fit somehow or another. So in that way, the kid is at least, so globalization, that's a unit, or that's an idea that covers across units.
That's an intersecting theme.
It's an intersecting theme. So that totally makes sense. So I could take urbanization and approach it from a globalization point of view. Like cities around the world, are they different from each other? Are they similar to each other? Is there any patterns of urbanization that are the same no matter where I go, or are they Chinese cities different than?
It's all a combination of global forces and local forces, Jim.
Yep. No, I get that. The kids may not, but if they come away with that understanding, I think it'd be worth the whole
The success,
thing.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
All
I
right.
don't want, we've been about 45 minutes here, so I don't want to, I know your time is precious to you guys. I've got an AP geography, I think I've got is it Rubenstein? AP book? So I have a
One of them.
textbook.
Yep.
So I've got enough here that I could start forming a skeleton of what the competition would look like. And then I'm going to need you guys to fill in the kind of the details, the content, the concepts. But if we approach it from the standpoint of I'm doing some kind of research on a topic I'm interested in, I'm going to tie it to the ideal of globalization. I'm going to make a map that tries to show something, and then I'm going to finally turn that into a presentation.
Jim, I'm going to send you the document that's the course of study, because in addition to content, there are skills in the AP exam, and those skills are really important. And so I think
Yep.
one of the features here is what skills are you going to incorporate in your project?
Yes.
It's
Good.
Well,
it's a big document, but it's
yeah,
you're
if
gonna
Kelly
have to see it.
and I know Jacob didn't get here and Lisa didn't get here, I'm recording this and I'm going to make our conversation available. Anybody who wants to listen to it that's on that list. If you have in mind some specific skills that you think would really fit this kind of a project that are in that list that Dave's talking about, rather than let me try and figure it out, just put them on the document, copy and paste them or whatever you want to do.
I'll just send it to you. It's too big for me to fiddle around
Yep.
with.
And
It's
Jim, I can send you a couple, maybe like a more succinct question for the theme that I maybe think of, or anything related to those skills. I can look at that this weekend a little bit, and I'll send you some ideas.
okay.
I think that scale analysis. Yeah,
Isn't
Yeah,
that-
no, that would
that's
be,
one of the
Yeah.
5 skill categories. That scale analysis will be really important.
Kelly? Whoop, I lost your,
Sorry, no, that's my fault. I was muted. That's number 5 on the skills scale analysis. Then qualitative is 4, quantitative is 2, or 3, I should say,
3.
excuse me.
okay, well, if you send me, Dave, you just send me that document. And then if you, Kelly and Molly, if you have like an initial inclination that said, here are the 2 or 3 skills I think would be the best for this particular type of a project, then just let me know. If you
Will
can
do.
just add it right onto the doc, the Google Doc, just type it at the bottom.